Ahoj, já jsem Pavel Sopera.
A já jsem Lukáš a tohle je Growcast, podcastový seriál akcelerátoru Meant to Grow, jehož cílem je pomoci vám, zakladatelům technologických startupů, rychle růst a expandovat.
V Growcastu se věnujeme praktickým radám a zkušenostem founderů a expertů na témata, která rychle rostoucí firmy opravdu trápí. Prostě žádné příběhy, ale praxe.
Zdravím vás z podcastového studia Magenta Experience Center a jdeme na to. Welcome to another episode of Growcast. Today we'll be exploring the ins and outs of creating compelling content, building successful content marketing strategies, and connecting with your audience in a meaningful way. And we're excited to bring you a unique episode recorded entirely in English, as we feature some incredible special guests.
Hello everyone from me as well, and we have actually two lovely guests as always, specialists in the area, and we have one in studio, Artur Kane. Hello Artur.
Hey.
And we have Duncan Hendy connecting to us from around Brno. Hello Duncan.
Hello there.
Let me briefly introduce you before we jump into the topic. Well, Duncan has only 3 words on his LinkedIn about part, which says content marketing director. So apparently he's a guy who we should have on this podcast. At the moment, he's a product marketing director at IDEA StatiCa, which is a software for structural engineers calculating safe structures from concrete and steel. Before that, he was a content marketing director in Ysoft. Then before that, VP for content in Content Rangers, then content strategy director at Kentico Software. So you heard many times a word content. So I'm very glad we have you here, Duncan, and again, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very content to be with you.
I should also maybe say that you are also a composer, but we should talk about it later on, or maybe over a beer.
I think so.
Second, we have Artur Kane. Hello, Artur, again. You have on your LinkedIn in your about, and I checked that the same way with Duncan, diehard technology marketer and evangelist. So apparently a person who should be here as well. And you are more specialized in product marketing, which is very closely connected to content. Artur spent some 6 years in Flowmon Networks, which is a network monitoring technology company, as a head of product marketing. Then he was 2 years in Good Access as CMO. He spent a couple of months in Tatum this year, if I'm not mistaken, and currently he's a senior product manager at Progress, which is a US-based software company. So welcome again. Before we jump into it, and I should say this because we do it every time, this podcast is really about practicalities. We want to focus really, please, because only founders are listening to us. And we had actually feedback from recently from people who are apparently not founders, and they did not understand a single word what we were talking about. But this is really a podcast for founders, and we want to be as concrete as possible, sharing practical tips, names, everything you can share, because with your experience, it's very helpful for startup founders to who are interested in content marketing to get some meat in the podcast.
All right, so let's dive right in. So why should those startup funders, the people trying to scale their businesses, care about content?
Shall I start? Okay, let me go. You have some time to think about it, Duncan. So I think the mindset of most of the founders that I've seen in the past around marketing in general is that marketing is a supporting role to the business. And it serves purpose of creating collateral and taking care of logos, and that's not the case for the most part. Marketing is an essential and crucial part of revenue generating machine in the company. And content is one of the main ways how we can create the revenue. We use content to create awareness about our company. We can use content to convert them into paying customers. We can use the same different type of content but still content to retain customers, make them into advocates of our technology. And without content, we wouldn't be able to communicate what we want to the world.
Mm-hmm. And Duncan, could you elaborate on that as well, as a sort of general question?
Certainly. I think content done well shows that the company completely gets, understands, empathizes with its potential customers and existing customers, because it means that the company has taken the time to speak to them, to understand deeply their pain points, to create content around addressing those, and then also to present them with actionable steps that they can take in order to solve their problems. And this is really the basis of content. It really is about engaging with the audience and showing that you care, and that way you get the trust. And that's very important.
So how can businesses effectively identify and target their audience with content?
I think since I come from the product marketing side, and this is what we do at product marketing, before we start investing in any campaign, before we start creating and spending budgets on advertisement, we need to create some content pieces. And before we do those content pieces, we need to be aware of the why we do this, for whom this is. And this is where product marketing comes in. At product marketing, we focus on things like positioning. Positioning is a defining statement about company, their uniqueness, who they target, and what are they trying to tell them and achieve. We usually create product and company positioning through some research, understanding the market, finding the sweet spot, and defining these things that you need to have before you start creating any content. And so how do you know who to target should come from a few factors. One is it needs to be in line with your uniqueness. So there's a famous product positioning of Harley Davidson, and they talk about their motorcycles being for macho guys who are predominantly from the US and who want to feel free and kind of not be bonded by today's world. And they tailor all their content and advertisement to these people. Why they got to having this positioning and these people, they very strategically and clearly said, there are no other motorcycles that do this. This is how we are unique, and this is what we will pursue. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I may come once more, to the general question at the beginning and target it to you, Duncan, please. Is the content important for all startups and all types of companies? Because one could say that it's only relevant for startups who are focused on inbound sales strategies, so that the content and content marketing is creating leads which are later converted in the sales funnel. Or is content important for all companies, you would say? And why?
Well, it's definitely important for all companies because, if you're introducing a new product, in order to connect with the target audience, they've got to perceive value in what it is that you're offering. So your content really needs to tell that compelling story where people can not only see the value that's in it for them, but they can also see and start to imagine how their situation can be better by using the product or service that you're providing. It's a very useful sales enablement tool as well. And in this day and age, it's very true that people self-educate. They will, if they're interested in something and they identify something in it, they'll want to know as much as they can about it on their own terms, so that they will feel enabled to make an informed decision about whether or not to continue and to pursue the sales process or the content consumption process with a company.
You mentioned a few very key things like solution awareness and decision making, as well as awareness as such, like brand awareness. Is there like any difference in what type of content should a company use as they push the client through this virtual funnel?
There definitely is. I see that many companies, when they think of content, first thing that comes into their mind is search engine optimization. So those kind of articles and blog posts that you put out on the internet in hope that Google will find keywords in that text and they will get some visitors and traffic to you. What they do when they create this content is very often they try to sell their solution or like overly sell the solution. What they talk about is we are the best and we have the most features and we are the cheapest and whatever benefits, uniquenesses they bring. But the chances that upon clicking on an unknown website, reading one article, and the only reason why I went there in the first place was to learn something new and not to buy something, chances for you to sell from this article are very, very slim. You need to have multiple steps before you create this thing, before you try to convert within an article in order to be successful. We call this a funnel. At the top of the funnel, we try to spread some awareness. We try to put our name out there. We try to warm up people by giving them and Duncan mentioned this twice already, and I hope we can spend some time on this. Very practical solutions to some of the needs that customers have. And only once they kind of get some trust, understanding, and awareness of your name, only then you can jump into further stages where you try to convince them, where you try to show them some social proof that other peers of theirs are using similar technologies. Only then you can jump into converting. There's a whole science behind how you get your visitors through those funnels.
So let's talk about the science. Duncan, could you elaborate on the science of how to get through the funnel effectively? Is it about the topics or is it about the types of content you are using through the way?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing that companies forget is who owns the customer journey. Well, the customer does, because it's their journey. So initially, to get someone to come to your website because you've created awareness, you've created a piece of content that really clicks with them. It's like, okay, this company really gets my problem. That's me exactly. And they come and they read and they say, great, this is some practical steps. I can see there's a solution. Now I want to make the next step. I always think of the customer journey as I don't even remember these books, these choose your own adventure books. You know, do you want to run down the corridor? Do you want to kill the dragon? That kind of thing. So the ideal customer journey is a process where there's a lot of transparency so that the customer can intuitively pursue their journey through the website. So there must be conversion points, soft and hard, that make logical sense to the customer. If they just want to bounce around the website a bit, they should be able to do it. So another very important thing about content is don't assume, don't start being too creative and too clever and coming up with amazing buzzwords in your menu. Think about the customer. How are they going to understand those? How are they going to intuitively continue their journey? And that's a very important thing. Always remember the customer owns their own journey.
What do you think are the most common challenges forced by content marketeers?
The biggest challenge is finding the right topic. There are a couple of ways how you can go about it. Many people just dwell and sit and wait for the rest of their teammates to come to them and tell them, oh, we have this new cool feature coming out, and do you want to write a blog about it? You could go and try to actively look for your competitors and see what they talk about. But you will always be limited with the fact that after a while you kind of become an expert on the topic, and most of the things that people want to hear and read are so obvious to you that you wouldn't think about creating content for that at the first place. So I would always recommend to everyone to go to the basics and think, okay, so I make shoes. Do I have to create some new topics that nobody has seen before around shoes and spend months and months figuring out my list of articles? Or can I just go back to basics and create an article about how do you clean your shoes? Becoming an expert means that you have this sort of blindness. Yeah. What people want to know is not all the extras and the cherries on the top. They want to know the basics. So don't forget about those basics.
Yeah, people very rarely search for something they don't know exists, right?
Yeah, and what's obvious to you isn't obvious to everyone else around you.
And the shoes should have a soul.
and they should heal as well.
Duncan, could you elaborate on that as well? Because it would be nice to hear your point of view.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Artur. And I mean, how are you going to know about what these topics are? Well, it's definitely knowing the personas, knowing the people that your public-facing roles are speaking to on a daily basis. You know, what are the objections? What are the questions? What's all those pain points that are constantly coming up? Because these are the things that really concern people. These are the things that people want to know about. And, you know, once you really understand your target audience and you know about the pains and you can think in terms, well, what question are they asking verbatim? How will they type that into Google? And making sure that your content really answers that question. It has to speak directly to them, that they will recognize that, as I said before, there is true value in that content. And yes, I want to click and I want to read. And another kind of litmus test I always do, and I know Artur knows this, I've said it to him many times, is if I'm going to create a piece of content, if I were that customer and I was going to share that with a colleague or a friend or somebody else, some significant other, as we say, how would I describe the value in it? And if you cannot actually say what value in sharing this content would have, then don't create the content.
But guys, could you share with us some practical tips? How do I actually find out what my customers are really, what do they really want, what they care about, and what the value is for them?
It's much easier than you would think. I'm part of South Moravian Innovation Center as an expert for marketing. So I meet quite a lot of owners and co-founders of startups. And one of the first things we do together is to make 10 calls to their current customers. Mm-hmm. And we spend 20 to 30 minutes on each call and ask them like super basic questions. Why did you choose us in the first place? What other competitors did you consider? What would be one recommendation that you can give us for us to improve? And that is an eye-opening moment for every single one of those co-founders that I met. Going back to what I said about becoming an expert, after a while you get disconnected from your audience unless you speak with them. And I think it's a great hygiene and good practice to still ask your customers. They are the biggest experts on their needs. Oh. And a simple conversation doesn't hurt anyone, and especially if they like you, it's absolutely fine to ask them from time to time to spend a little time with you. Do not forget about those who you couldn't sell to, because sticking only to your customers means that you might be missing that 80% on the market that you haven't covered yet. But definitely start there.
And again, do you have also any other practical ideas how in your career you did it, like to be in connection with your customers and know what they want?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, what Artur said is 100% true. I mean, one of the questions is always good to ask as well. I'm a great believer in persona calls, and is, you know, what pain point were you first trying to solve when you discovered our product? because that gives you a very good insight into exactly why they discovered you. And it's a very key finding. And Artur's right, finding those people that didn't buy, what were the things, what persuaded you to buy another product? What was it about it? What was it about the sales process as well? That's very important. And when it comes to choosing the ideal persona, I always think that a lot of people try to please absolutely everything in their everybody in their content marketing. That's the wrong approach. You should really know who is your ideal customer profile, who are the biggest deals, who closed the fastest, who didn't churn, and who is not a support nightmare. Because you don't want to create, a relationship with a customer only to find it costs you more to serve them than they actually bring to you in revenue. And once you have that idea, it's that kind of list of people, you can really home your personas on this, because you know that you've identified that ideal customer profile.
That's great.
And it doesn't mean that there's only one persona either. There are many different personas, especially in the business that I'm in with structural engineers. Our software, it's involved in the whole chain of structural engineering. So it's understanding to know where's the handoff point in that chain. What are those pain points particular to that handoff point? Do they do it the same all around the world? And really making sure that you have a deep understanding, not only of the persona, but their workflow, everything they do. And that way you'll have a really, really clear persona, and you can address your content pretty darn well based on that.
Like, trying to build upon that, like, if you go back to the idea of shoes, there are plenty of shoemakers on the market. And if we go back to the basics and we produce plenty of content on how to clean your shoes, there are plenty of companies who do the same thing. How do you differentiate your content? How do you stand out from the crowd?
You don't have to necessarily stand out in the crowd in all of your content. There could be plenty of cases where your content should be sort of standardized and kind of fall into the mainstream thing. Where you should be unique and identify yourself is in the vision that you put into the product, into the customer service, and how to identify it. In many cases, the reason why someone built business is the uniqueness. In many cases, they were the anchor customer, or they were part of a business that they didn't believe in the ways how they went about things. So to give you an example, I have a friend who used to work for a company that was manufacturing garden hoses, and he knew how the company wasn't flexible at all, and he wanted to change this customer service. That was his reason to build a company. Over the years, you tend to forget about those things. But if you put it on the paper, if you create it as the single statement that governs everything you do, and you always do the fact check whether the decisions you're making, content that you're creating, is still in line with this idea, in 90% of the cases, you are down right, and you don't have to research your uniqueness. So go back to roots in many cases.
Yeah. Does that apply also to the content marketing formats, or are there any special formats of content that have gained traction recently, Duncan?
Maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that.
Are there any, I would say, innovative content formats or mediums that have become popular recently, or is it also going back to the basics, writing blog posts, articles?
I would maybe actually go to the basics first, because we have also listeners who are completely new to content marketing. Could you maybe both of you say what are the what are the formats or types of content which are the most important, and then we can go into the innovative ones.
I think yeah. So I think choosing the right type of content is really dependent on where they are in the sales funnel. You've got to create blog posts that create utility. I mean, one thing I wanted to go back to what Artur said, and he hit it on the head when he was talking about hoses: frustration. That was the reason that guy started the company. Frustration. And that's probably shared with the people that are using the product, is emotion. So those things are very, very important to bear in mind. Emotion sells very well because emotion, people connect with it. But, and then not to be a politician, I'll go back to your actual question as well. So blog posts are great because they show thought leadership. One thing to be very, very careful of thought leadership is that you might think, okay, I'm going to tell you about what the trends are. This is stuff that's coming up. And that can be very good, but you've got to say, do these trends connect with the audience? Is it something of interest? Is it something that is of utility? Content must always be of utility. And if it's not, then you're just showing that you're very clever and you won't connect with your audience. Videos, of course, are also a very good piece of the content because it's very good for both brand awareness. There's someone speaking, you can feel the emotion in what they're saying. It's extremely shareable. You don't have to read anything. And then you have infographics. Infographics are ridiculously shareable. They're easy to consume and can often lead to longer form pieces of content. And also, of course, backlink friendly. Everybody likes backlinks. And then, of course, the case study, or as I prefer to call it, the customer success story. These are great pieces of third-party endorsement where people can recognize other people that had similar problems to the ones they're feeling now. You must be very specific on focusing on what was that initial pain point or pain points. And it shows how somebody else solved a problem that somebody has using your technology. And so it means that it brings your technology to life because it's very much in a use case scenario.
Thanks for the tips, Duncan, and it's your turn, Artur.
As Duncan listed a whole variety of content types, I think there is
He listed 5 and he was asked for 5.
And there are many more, but I think the general rule of thumb is trying to figure out where your audience wants to consume the content. That will define the form and that will define the type of content you want to do. So I was recently taking my son to a baseball match in a different city, and I noticed there were so many motorcyclists around us. And then later I figured that that road was very famous for motorcyclists. And what you could see was billboards for a motorcycle equipment shop that was like 50 kilometers away from there. And I think what they nailed was to think, okay, we are motorcyclists, we like this road, it's very famous, we should be there. And the only form that they could do was physical billboard. The same would apply for a shoe company. A shoe company for young people, they spend a lot of time on social media. What are the types of content that I can put on social media? It's mostly pictures, some short videos. This would be my type of go-to content. And in enterprise businesses, my audience could be a CIO who goes on a conference twice a year, and they want to learn from experts who deliver speeches. So this is where I want to be. And my content wouldn't be about trying to create an ad or billboard. It would be about gathering the demand generated on an event like a conference where my logo is exposed.
And going back to the content funnel, would you say there are specific formats that are most suitable for specific stages of the funnel, or is it universal? Is it about where your prospect is and what type of content they want to consume, or is there a differentiation there?
There definitely is. I mean, at the beginning, you don't want to force facts about you to the people, and you want the top of the funnel content to be short, sweet, engaging, not pushing too much of what you want to say. Create a feeling, create some sort of sensation. And pictures, infographics are great for that. Short videos, maybe just a logo with, Cooperativa, the insurance company, they used to make these jokes on the bridges, if you remember. And it wasn't about sell their services. It was about creating some sort of awareness. So games, jokes, quizzes, these sort of engaging, short, sweet things are generally great for awareness. And then when you go later into stages, you can try to ask those people to spend more time with you. So a white paper or a webinar that takes 20, 30 minutes to spend some time on is something that requires more attention. And for that attention, you need to have their trust, which you built in top, higher stages of the funnel.
Can you share some examples of brands that have excelled, in your opinion, in their content marketing efforts?
Okay, I can say Apple. Apple are amazing at selling you products you didn't even know you wanted. And how do they do that? Because they create a brand tribe. It's like a lifestyle choice, and that really connects with people. So I love the way Apple does it. I mean, they've just introduced a $2,500 headset so that you don't have to look at your family in the living room, and you can imagine a world around you. It's so Black Mirror. It's so innovative. It's definitely creating a niche, but people watch it and they can imagine how their life is transformed by this. Yeah. And that's really, really, really clever.
And is such success replicable in the B2B world?
B2B brands are generally not love brands. And emotion and lifestyle isn't usually the reason why you get a B2B products, although there are differences. Like IDEA StatiCa, the company that Duncan is with, could be a love brand because they're quite
because
unique
Duncan is doing
and they're quite unique.
Thanks, Artur.
No, but I wanted to give some maybe more local, smaller examples. Everyone knows Airbank. When they established a company, the whole reason was to simplify things. So the decisions they were making were let's look at traditional banks who have 40 pages of price list, and we will just reduce it to 200 lines on 3 pages. And another example could be, we talked about shoes. So Vasky, who focus on tradition of shoemaking in Czech Republic, speaking to younger generation who want something stylish, but that's more ecologic. And so you can replicate Apple's success in smaller brands. Yeah. You may in B2B.
Give me an example.
I don't. Maybe that's an answer.
So imagine,
I don't have an example.
Okay, so I'm a startup founder and I really want to start putting some content out there. Where do I go?
Duncan has, apparently.
Yeah, I'm thinking Notion, which is like a wiki Jira type on a SaaS product. And what they did is they got a lot of early adopters, including me, because I could see that they really were putting the customer at the center of their development. Their roadmap was very, very much customer influenced. And I like that approach. I always thought Atlassian was far too big. It's almost too big to care. I'm sorry if Atlassian's listening, but it's true. And I like that. You can really have a product that is an MVP, and you can get early adopters, and you can make that roadmap very much customer influenced, and you feel like you're part of the journey. And this is very, very engaging, and I want to stay with them, see where they're going, because I like their product, and I use it on a daily basis. So that is a good example of a startup with the bare bones, but really, really made people want to become early adopters.
Okay, thank you. Well, we learned so far that content marketing is quite essential for the success of the company, and we learned how to effectively go through the content funnel and how to create the topics and the types of content. Let's move now how to deliver it and how to actually set up the team which is delivering. Could you maybe say a couple of your experiences from your past careers, how to set up the team, what should be inside of the company, what may be outsourced? Maybe you start, Artur.
Sure. 10 years ago, you wouldn't find many people doing product marketing in Czech Republic. While in the US, that's been a topic and an essential role in the company for the last 20 years at the time. And I'm a very strong believer in building your marketing department with product marketing in mind, or a good product marketer. That's the person who can learn and figure out what's your uniqueness, what topics you should cover, what you should talk about, how you should persuade your customers. And they are also generally good content creators. They might not have that much experience with performance marketing, but that is, for me, generally a very good start. And from experience with Czech IT startups, I think the demand for product marketers has exploded in the recent years because they understood how important it is for their success. So I would start there. And on the other hand, I do not recommend for a small startup starting with an agency. A freelancer who promises to deliver everything.
You would not.
I would not recommend this. You're looking for a needle in a haystack. Your experience is usually not sufficient enough to recognize the right person, and you can get burned. And I see this a lot. So look for a person who understands marketing strategy, can do some research, is something like a product marketer, can create content, start there, and then take it from there. The person who's good will usually tell you what other roles they need in order to scale.
Speaking of outsourcing, let's address the elephant in the room, AI, generative AI. What is your view on the future of content in terms of AI, Duncan?
Well, AI is an amazing thing for brainstorming. It's a great way of coming up with ideas. But I think Artur touched on this, is uniqueness is very important in marketing. Uniqueness comes from a deep understanding of the values of the company, connected with the values of the consumer. Now, can AI create content that understands uniqueness, that can understand exactly what your customers need? Or is it like outsourcing, as Artur said? You're just outsourcing to someone who is providing content to order, doesn't necessarily live and breathe the lifestyle of the company and know what all the goals are. So AI tends to be very generic. It tends to produce very bland, mirage content, isn't able to bring any unique quality to it at the moment. And you also have the danger of it doesn't know if the resources and the facts it's pulling in are accurate. So there's also a big chance that what you create actually will do you more damage than good. So if you say, okay, AI, I can produce 10 times, 20 times more content than with a human. If the human who really connects, really understands all those points that they should do, emotion, pain points, all these things, surely that one piece of content by the human is going to outperform AI.
Speaking of performance, how can content marketeers measure the effectiveness of their efforts?
Before you start implementing loads and loads of tools that marketers can use, from analyzing the website traffic to tracking leads going through the funnel and conversion rates, and attributing different touch points with different scores and lead scoring and all these things. It start by setting the goal of your content before you publish it, and then see whether you met the goal. The goal doesn't have to be numbers. It doesn't have to be number of visitors. It can be if you're creating an article for your current customers and you want them to learn about some new feature, try to figure out how many use the feature. If you don't have analytics in place, call a few of them and ask them out. If your goal with the content is to maybe convince someone to join your CV. Maybe better example that everyone can connect to is if you're asking people to send you submit a review of your product on G2, Capterra, wherever. Number of reviews is an obvious thing, and you don't have to have analytical tools to track that. Set the goal in advance. The goal doesn't have to be the best goal, by the way, is create revenue. So how marketing can build up pipeline is the best indicator, obviously, but it doesn't always have to be with tools. It can be with common sense and a few.
Yeah, but if you look at it at a bit of a macro level, and I'm a startup founder, and somebody's trying to convince me that I should invest into a content marketing team, what would be the 3 main metrics, indicators I should track in order to know whether I'm doing a good job, Duncan?
Well, it goes back to what Artur said. Before you do anything, you have to think, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Is it, do you want to increase brand awareness? Do you want to get more sales? Do you want to populate your pipeline? Do you want to look at the quality of the leads? These are things you have to understand if you want to set the right metrics. And also, what is your budget? What is success? What is the cost of acquisition of a customer? And that way you can see, okay, well, I've generated this much money, but in order to do that, it's cost me this. And I know the one thing that Artur is a big fan of is attribution. If you can somehow, and you can do it in Google, it's not so difficult in G4 as it is now called, what are those conversion points? What are those touch points? And what was my content investment, was my marketing investment actually paying off? Was it contributing to that? And if it's not, you must, the good thing about data is it's actionable. It must act on it. It's not working now. Why is it not working? Why is my advertising bringing people to the page, but they don't do anything, they don't convert? It's very good to have a very transparent approach to how you look at your data and see the things that work, the things that don't work. And remember, a campaign is not a runaway train. It can be stopped. It can be refined. It can be improved upon. So these are things you really must know. What are the goals? How is my content and my marketing affecting me achieving those goals? What can I do better? What can I repeat? Don't reinvent the wheel every time. So these things are very, very important.
Okay, guys, we are actually running out of time, so I have to slowly close. But we have a sort of a tradition. As I said, we are trying to be as practical as possible. Could you, and Artur, you already mentioned there are like multiple, many tools you are using in your practice. Could you name, both of you, at least 3, and say why these are the 3 you selected and why our listeners should use them, maybe?
I use Asana for everyday work, and it's just the easiest one for me to grasp. And everybody uses different project management tools. But I think that's a good start. Having the visibility of where you are, what you do, who's responsible for what, who has this subtask, etc. So that's my go-to tool for sure. When it comes to creating content, I'm a Google user, and so sharing documents and collaborating on creating, writing, is just as simple as that. And then because when you create content, most of the times it will be a digital type of content. It goes onto a website, and an SEO tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs is an absolute essence. And I go for reference there all the time. Recently, it's some AI tools. I don't expect them to do my work. Without the idea that I put into it, it wouldn't give me the results I need, because it just takes data from a database essentially and rewrites them. So that's my 3.5, I guess, tools.
Well, you can say 4, it's not a problem. How about you, Duncan? Apparently it's not the ChatGPT.
No, it's not. I agree mostly with Artur in what I use the tools for. So, for example, we use DevOps because we happen to have it in the company, and it works quite well for what we need it for. Because effective marketing team is a marketing team that doesn't work in silos. It's a marketing team that knows where the handoff is in what they're doing, and also knows, how well their team is working, where are the blockers, these kind of things. And SEMrush is also extremely good for knowing what kind of content should be resonating out there, and also for recommending areas where you can improve. And also I like a data board or Power BI, because data is can be like a black box, but when you can actually visualize everything in one place without going to that tool, going to the other tool, and trying to scrabble around and find all the data, you can actually represent it in one place and also connect how one influences the other. That's very useful as well.
Love that. Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys, for all the practical tips. Maybe one last thing that I will ask you, what would be one piece of advice you would give to people who are just starting with their content marketing efforts?
And that person is a co-founder.
Yeah.
Is a founder of B2B startup.
Founder of B2B startup starting with content. Okay. When you bring a new person to your team, think of the first 3 hours of knowledge that you share with them and put it down on the paper first and put it out there to the public. That's your first content.
Duncan?
Don't take any shortcuts in researching who your audience is, what keeps them awake at night, how you can help them sleep, or why they might still wake up with bad dreams because they don't trust you. Never ever make any shortcuts on that. You really, really need to know these people inside out, because that will define your content strategy. Another thing that Artur said is just absolutely great. I have an internal wiki onboarding guide for absolutely everybody who joins our company. It's brilliant because it's a go-to document. You can click around, you can find every piece of information you need. Even if you forget something, you know where to go. And the point of it is that should you meet a structural engineer in the street, as you do typically, you should be able to have a 5-minute compelling conversation with them, because you understand deeply their pains, what the company does, and things like that. It's a really, really good reference sheet.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Duncan.
Gentlemen, this was very, very interesting today, and thank you very much for sharing very good tips for our listeners. It was Duncan Hendy and Artur Kane today as guests of our podcast. Thank you very much again.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks for
You're very welcome. Yeah, thanks. Anytime.
Bye.